Welcome to Kayle Lore Spotlight. Before we witness Kayle's lore, note that Morgana's perspective of the story you're about to hear can be found on Lumi's channel, link included below. And now, without further ado, here she goes. As the Rune Wars raged, Mount Targon stood as a beacon against the oncoming darkness. Kayle and her twin sister Morgana were born beneath that light. Their parents, Mihira and Killam, began the perilous climb in search of the power to save their tribe from destruction. Even when Mihira learned she was with child, she pushed onward. At the mountain's summit, she was chosen as a divine vessel for the aspect of justice, wielding a sword that blazed with a fire brighter than the sun. Not long after, the twins were born. Kayle, the elder by a breath, was as bright as Morgana was dark. But Mihira had become a fearsome warrior, far greater than any mortal. Killam began to fear her new divinity, and the sorceress enemies that were drawn to her light. He resolved to take the girls out of harm's way, journeying across the Conqueror's Sea to a settlement where the land itself was said to offer protection against magic. In their new homeland, Killam raised the twins, their temperaments growing more different with each passing day. Kayle was precocious, often arguing with the settlement's leaders about their rules. She had no real memory of her mother's powers, but knew the laws were meant to keep them all safe. Her father rarely spoke of such things, but Kayle was certain Mihira had saved them by ending the Rune Wars on some distant battlefield. When the twins were teenagers, a streak of flame split the sky. A sword, smoldering with celestial fire, struck the ground between Kayle and her sister, breaking in two. Killam was distraught when he recognized the blade as Mihira's. Kayle eagerly snatched up one half of the weapon, feathered wings springing forth from her shoulders, and Morgana cautiously followed her example. In that moment, Kayle felt more connected to her mother than ever, certain that this was a sign she was alive, and wanted her daughters to follow the same path as her. The people of the settlement believed the girls had been blessed by the stars, destined to protect the fledgling nation of Demacia from outsiders. These winged protectors became symbols of light and truth, and were revered by all. Kayle fought in many battles, flying at the head of the growing militia and imbuing the weapons of the worthy with her own sanctified fire. But in time, her pursuit of justice began to consume her. Seeing threats within and without, she founded a Judicator order to enforce the law, and hunted down rebels and reavers with equal fervor. But there was one person she softened her judgment toward. To the dismay of her followers, Kayle allowed Morgana to rehabilitate wrongdoers who appeared humble enough to admit their guilt. Kayle's protege, Ronus, was the most disapproving of all. He swore to do what Kayle would not, and attempted to imprison Morgana. Kayle returned to find the people rioting, and Ronus dead. Consumed by rage, she looked down upon the city and summoned her divine fire to cleanse the city of its sins.
Only those you love can break your heart.
Morgana flew up to meet her, raising her blade.
I will take on everything!
If Kayle was to purge the darkness she saw in mortal hearts, she would have to start with her own sister.
Light and glory!
The two battled across the heavens,
Justice unyielding! Justice is never blind!
each matching the other's terrible blows.
Kneel before the light! Not all light is a gift, Kayle. Kayle!
Abruptly, the fight was halted by their father's anguished cry. Kayle watched Killam die in her sister's arms, a senseless victim of the violence that had overtaken the city that day. Then she held the two halves of their mother's sword in her hands and vowed she would never again let mortal emotions rule her. As she leapt back into the sky, soaring high above the clouds, she felt she could almost see Mount Targon beyond the horizon, its formidable peak bathed red by the setting sun. There she would seek perfect celestial clarity. There she would stand at her mother's side and fulfill her legacy to the aspect of justice. Though she has been absent from Demacia for many centuries, Kayle's legend has inspired much of the kingdom's culture and lore. Grand statues and icons of the winged protector give strength to the heart of every warrior who marches to illuminate the night and banish all shadows from their land. In times of strife and chaos, there are many who cling to the hope that Kayle might eventually return, and others who pray that such a day will never come.
As evil grows, so shall I. My devotion is unbreakable. Kayle, I know her soul. She broke my heart.